Welcome to the Right Academy. I'm Matthew R. Miller. Today we're talking about exposition. This is when, in a story, in a novel, you give the reader background information. That might be the background of a character, their history. It might be the backstory of a place. It might be certain details like that that the reader should know. Now, if you just have a character appear out of nowhere, the reader knows nothing about them, right? And so by giving some exposition, it helps the reader understand the characters and the story. You've probably heard before this axiom, show, don't tell. This is overused a lot, and some people think it's a hard and fast rule and get all worked up about it. But here's what it means, basically. When you're describing something, it's better to write it as if the reader's there in the story, instead of like you're just talking to the reader as a lecture. Here's an example. Listen to these two ways of describing Roger, okay? First one is this. Roger was a real estate agent who had lost so many sales that he was struggling to pay his bill. Second way. I don't think I'm going to make an offer on the house. Roger's heart sank at his client's words. He thought about his family at home, sitting in a dark house because of the overdue electric bill. Which one involves you, engages you in the story better? I would say number two. The first one is just describing something. The second one is telling a story. And that's what you want to aim for, okay, if you can. Exposition can be done well. It's often necessary, and it can be done bad too, but it is necessary. There's a movie, a really, I don't know if it's horror, sci-fi, called Manos, The Hands of Fate. It's a terrible film. And like partially into it, it goes in this long exposition that lasts for like 20 minutes, this backstory that has nothing to do with the film. It's an example of a horrible exposition. So here's some tips for good exposition. Okay. What you want to avoid is information dumps, what they're often called, where you just give this long, kind of lecture telling the reader what happened. This bores the reader and it removes them from being immersed in your world. Okay. And I gave those two examples about Roger a little bit ago. First rule about exposition. If you can show it rather than tell it, do that. You can't always. There's all sorts of weird situations you come into when you're a writer. But if you can show it rather than tell it, do so. Don't tell a reader what happened, but put them in a story about it happening. Second, you don't always have to give exposition. You can let it reveal itself in the present story. You can let the past reveal itself in the present. Or you can let a person's background, a character's background, tell you something about them without having to state it explicitly. Example, if you came across a character who had a French accent, what would you assume about that character? You assume she's probably from France, right? Or a French-speaking country. So by giving her a French accent, you have made her interesting. You've made it a part of her rather than just saying she was from France. Okay? As characters develop, their backstories will develop. Remember, characters should go through transformation. And so as you develop your characters throughout the story, also will their backstories develop. You don't have to dump it all at once. The reader doesn't have to know everything about a character on page one. That's not interesting, right? Next, third, some things can't be shown. Some things have to be told. Sometimes you need exposition. Telling a history, a lot of details. There's situations you'll come into where you simply have to give information. In that case, remember, it's not wrong. In that case, there's some things you can do to make it less boring for the reader. Break it up with dialogue. So don't just give an entire 10 pages of backstory, but break it up with some dialogue among characters. Or break it up with some prose, some descriptions of the setting, the emotions of the characters, they're reacting to learning things, right? So make it more like a story than an info dump. Next, I found useful is to use flashbacks. Now, don't overuse them because that is also takes the reader out of the story. But a flashback is a way of showing character's background without telling it. I use this sometimes in my books. For example, my book, Subject 1, Jack the Ripper, I give flashbacks of Jack's life before he became the killer and kind of have him in situations that are like a story. So the reader sees it, and I put it in the first person present tense often because I think it really immerses you. So the reader it's like reading a story rather than being lectured about the character's background. So use flashbacks if appropriate. Don't overuse them though, because anything overused is not good in writing. Next, have characters give their own exposition here and there with dialogue, a little bit here, a little bit there. So exposition doesn't only have to be the writer, the narrator, telling the reader. You can have characters. In that same book, Subject One, Jack the Ripper, in order to talk about a certain kind of, let's say, supernatural creature, I have one of the characters tell a ghost story. And so it's really like giving the information, but also it's a story. Next, if you have to give exposition, see if you can come up with a unique and interesting way to do it. I saw a horror film, and I can't remember the name offhand, but it was basically a girl discovering some secrets, some dark secrets about a little village. And the way they did it, they had a school play showing the history of the village. I thought that was quite clever. So you're like seeing a story played out in a theater, in the movie, but is also giving you the history of the town without just, saying it in a big information dump. So try to come up with an interesting way or a unique way to give background. Finally, exposition is not inherently bad or wrong. It's one of those things where a new writer might say, oh, well, information dump, so I should never use exposition. That's not the case. If you need to use it, use it. But when you do use it, make it good, interesting, engaging storytelling. Make it good writing. Make it interesting. Think about if someone were telling you this story, would you get bored and want to nod off, or would you find it intriguing and engaging? So exposition, you have to do it. It's not a bad thing. But if you do it, the general rule is make it creative, make it engaging, and try to show rather than tell. If you like the video, please like and subscribe. I'm Matthew Miller, and you're watching the Write Right Academy.